My name is Timothy Alberino, and this is part 7 in a series of lectures based on the content of my book, Birthright, available now in paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com. If you're listening to this lecture on my podcast, you can also watch it on YouTube by visiting my channel. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find it in podcast format by searching the Alberino Analysis on your preferred podcast platform. You can also follow me on Instagram, and most importantly, sign up for my mailing list on timothyalberino.com. For centuries, the Genesis 6 affair, which is the prelude to the Great Flood, has been the topic of continual controversy. The story of Noah's Ark is easy enough to comprehend, but the events that precipitated the cataclysm of the flood are shrouded in mystery. The reason for this intentional ambiguity in the biblical narrative is that these events are thoroughly chronicled elsewhere, namely in the Book of Enoch, the content of which was undoubtedly well known to the ancient Hebrews. Hence, the writer of Genesis offers only this. Now it came to pass that when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. Enoch paints a slightly more lurid picture. And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. These verses appear to have been pasted almost word for word into the Genesis account, which makes perfect sense if the intent of the author was to recall the reader to the testimony of Enoch, wherefrom they were copied. For most of church history, the incident they describe was scrutinized and debated exclusively in the halls of seminaries among budding scholars. But thanks to the internet, Genesis 6:1 has become nearly as famous as John 3:16. Consequently, a panoply of books and documentaries have been published in recent years to capitalize on the growing demand for all things Nephilim. In my opinion, though broadly consumed, the implications of the Genesis 6 affair have been poorly digested. If, having read these verses, the theological furniture in your mind has not been rearranged, then you have simply not understood what is insinuated in the text. That the angels, the children of heaven, could look upon human women and burn with lust for them is a shocking contradiction to the traditional perception of heavenly beings, who are not supposed to be clothed in bodies of flesh. Furthermore, that they deemed themselves reproductively compatible with our species is sufficient to overturn the notion that only we are made in the likeness of God. The meaning of the text is inescapable. The sons of God were sexually attracted to the daughters of men, and desired to copulate with them and beget offspring. The sexuality implicit in the Genesis 6 affair is a stumbling block for many theologians who insist that angels are purely spiritual beings without physical bodies, and therefore incapable of lusting after, having sex with, and impregnating human females. Forcefully though the argument is advanced, it will never escape the counter-momentum of its own irrelevance, because that is precisely what they, the angels, did. The problem for theologians is that sensual impulses imply sexual organs and reproductive biology, which, according to convention, angels must not have. In an effort to circumvent this problem, some researchers have suggested that the angels did not themselves have sex with women, but instead possessed the bodies of men in order to perform the act, or alternatively, simply incarnated with male anatomy, which assigns to them magical, metamorphic powers nowhere evidenced in the scriptures. Others postulate that sexual intercourse never actually occurred, and that the procreative procedure was accomplished through some form of genetic engineering. All of these theories, and indeed any that may be devised, fail to address the critical first cause. The children of heaven lusted after the daughters of men. How can spiritual beings, supposedly unequipped for sexual intercourse and incapable of reproduction, be subject to carnal passions and accomplish procreation? Do the sons of God even have seed to sow? Surely the fact that they impregnated women indicates that they do. Proponents of the genetic engineering hypothesis attempt to sidestep this conundrum by suggesting that the angels did not use their own seed to fertilize the ova of human females, but the seed of other creatures modified in vitro. In the first place, this proposition evades the first cause. They wanted to have sex, a desire which would have hardly been satisfied in a petri dish. And in the second place, it dismisses the testimony of Enoch, who leaves no room for doubt as to how they performed the act. It is evident that Enoch, as well as the writer of Genesis, clearly mean to say that the angels lusted after, copulated with, and procreated through human females. The Masoretic rendering of Genesis 6 designates these mutinous angels as sons of God. In the Septuagint, they are called the angels of God, which consequently invalidates the ridiculous Sethite nonsense. However, Hebrew tradition, as well as numerous ancient extra-biblical texts, including the Book of Enoch, denominate them with the Aramaic word irin, rendered in the Greek as egregore, and in the English as watchers. The watcher denomination is not exclusively extra-biblical. The book of Daniel recounts a fascinating incident in which King Nebuchadnezzar is sentenced to an unusual punishment for his excessive pride. He is driven mad and made to live among the beasts of the field and eat grass for 7 years. What makes this story even more intriguing is that Nebuchadnezzar's judgment is decreed by a council of watchers. I saw in the visions of my head as I lay in my bed, and behold, a watcher, a holy one, came down from heaven. He proclaimed aloud and said thus, "Chop down the tree and lop off its branches. Strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts flee from under it, and the birds from its branches. But leave the stump of its roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze, amid the tender grass of the field. Let him be wet with the dew of heaven. Let his portion be with the beasts in the grass of the earth. Let his mind be changed from a man's, and let a beast's mind be given to him. And let 7 periods of time pass over him. The sentence is by the decree of the watchers, the decision by the word of the holy ones, to the end that the living may know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men, and gives it to whom he will, and sets over it the lowliest of men." This scene recalls us to the counsel of the Elohim, who determined to make man in their likeness and grant him dominion of the earth. The council's decision regarding Nebuchadnezzar is a reiteration of Adam's irrevocable endowment. The authority of human rulers will be upheld, even if they defy heaven. But the council will appoint and depose them as they see fit. Having been thoroughly humbled after 7 years of madness, the king of Babylon obsequiously declares that Yahweh does according to his will among the host of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. All realms, terrestrial and extraterrestrial, are subject to the decree of the king and his council. The identity of the Watchers is no great mystery. Much like the term angel, Watcher is an occupational descriptive, as in soldier or warrior, or more precisely, warden. That is to say, it does not supply insight into what a being is, but what it does. In Aramaic and Hebrew, as in English, watching can mean guarding, which is the job description of the cherubim, who watch over the throne and kingdom of God with extreme vigilance, and are thus aptly portrayed with many eyes and 4 faces looking in every direction, as if to convey nothing escapes our gaze. Daniel depicts the Watchers as members of the divine council and refers to them as holy ones, which is a distinction reserved for the highest-ranking beings who dwell in the presence of God. Clearly, the Watchers are synonymous with the cherubim, the princes and wardens of the kingdom, the most esteemed members of the elder race. The methods by which the Watchers accomplish their transgression are not as important as the motives. Why did they do it? Aside from the primal urge for sexual intercourse, they seem to have been consumed with another carnal impulse: envy. The Watchers were envious of mankind. Specifically, there are 3 things they coveted. 1. Wives. Mankind was granted a special privilege that was not afforded to the sons of God: a female counterpart, a wife. The Watchers envied men for their wives. 2. Offspring. Because men had female counterparts, they could procreate offspring. The Watchers wanted to beget their own children and have families, like the sons of Adam. 3. Dominion. Mankind was given dominion of planet Earth. The Watchers coveted man's dominion and plotted to usurp it by producing their own human hybrid sons. This is perhaps the most important and most overlooked aspect of their transgression. The defection of the Watchers, though provoked by lust, was not entirely impulsive. They had a plan. By copulating with the women of Earth, they could produce their own offspring, who might be human enough to inherit Adam's birthright. The half-breed sons of the Watchers, inexorably superior to their human cousins in every way, would seize the thrones of men and establish their own kingdoms, which their fathers would rule by proxy. We will analyze this situation at length in the next lecture. If you wish to further explore the topics presented in this lecture, I encourage you to get my book, Birthright: The Coming Post-Human Apocalypse and the Usurpation of Adam's Dominion on Planet Earth.